German pilots laughed at America's red tails, then they racked up 112 kills with the vast skis. Knew the program was designed to be a footnote, a failed experiment that would justify the status quo. They carried the weight of 13 million African Americans on their shoulders. Their war had begun long before they ever saw the enemy. The dusty, humid air of central Alabama was an unlikely birthplace for a legend. At Moton Field, the experiment began in July 1941. From the start, the pressure was immense, and the scrutiny was constant. The Army Air Corps, still deeply skeptical, set the bar for the Tuskegee program impossibly high. The washout rate was punishingly high, ensuring that only the absolute best and most resilient would ever earn their wings. The training itself was brutal, mirroring the programs for white pilots. Cadets started in Stearman PT-17 biplanes, then moved to the more powerful Vultee BT-13 Valiant, and finally the AT-6 Texan for advanced training. They would graduate to the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, the same plane they'd first fly in combat. But the challenges weren't just in the cockpit. The entire Tuskegee Army airfield was a testament to the dual battle they were fighting. The pilots, navigators, bombardiers, mechanics, and nurses were all African American. They were proving that an entire airbase could be run by the very people the Army's own reports called incapable. The hostility was also environmental. The base was an island of black ambition in a sea of Jim Crow Alabama. Cadets faced constant slurs and discrimination in the local town, a daily reminder that even as they trained to die for their country, that same country saw them as second-class citizens. Within the military, some commanders actively sought to discredit the program. The man who held them together was their commander, Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. His time at West Point had forged him into a leader of immense discipline. He knew his men couldn't just be as good as their white counterparts. They had to be better. He pushed them relentlessly, demanding perfection, knowing any mistake would be used as evidence against them all. In April 1943, the first graduates, the 99th Pursuit Squadron, were deployed to North Africa. But their arrival wasn't the triumphant moment they'd hoped for. Attached to an all-white fighter group, their commander largely ignored them. They were assigned obsolete P-40 Warhawks, which were outclassed by the faster German Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-90s. For months, they were stuck with secondary missions, ground attacks, coastal patrols, kept far from the real fight. The lack of aerial victories led to a crisis. White commanders reported back to the Pentagon that the experiment was failing. A proposal was even floated to pull them from combat entirely. But then came Anzio. In January 1944, the Allies were struggling to hold a fragile beachhead in Italy under constant attack from the Luftwaffe. The 99th Fighter Squadron was thrown into the fray. Over 2 frantic days, flying their supposedly inferior P-40s, they engaged waves of German fighters. Outnumbered and outgunned, they flew with a desperate ferocity. When the smoke cleared, the Tuskegee Airmen had shot down 12 enemy aircraft. It was a stunning, undeniable victory that silenced the critics. There was no more talk of reassigning them. The experiment was working. Soon after, the 99th was combined with 3 other black squadrons to form the independent 332nd Fighter Group under the command of the newly promoted Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. They had survived the skepticism and the sabotage. Now, it was time to build a legend. The summer of 1944 marked a huge shift for the 332nd Fighter Group. Anzio had earned them respect, but their equipment was still holding them back. They had moved on to the P-47 Thunderbolt, a tough fighter, but not the plane that would define them. That honor belonged to arguably the greatest piston-engine fighter of the war, the North American P-51 Mustang. Getting the P-51 was a complete game-changer. With its powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Mustang was a weapon of unparalleled capability. It was fast, agile, and most importantly, it had legs. The P-51 could fly farther than almost any other fighter, making it the perfect aircraft for long-range bomber escort missions deep into Germany. Suddenly, the pilots of the 332nd were no longer at a disadvantage. They could meet the Luftwaffe on equal, if not superior, terms. With this new aircraft came a new identity. To distinguish his group from the dozens of other Allied squadrons in the sky, Colonel Davis made a simple but brilliant decision. He ordered the tails of his group's P-51s to be painted a distinctive, vibrant crimson. It was practical, allowing for quick identification in the chaos of a dogfight. But it quickly became something more. It became a symbol. They were no longer just the 332nd Fighter Group, they were the Red Tails. It was also then that Colonel Davis cemented the tactical doctrine that would become their hallmark. For many fighter pilots, the goal was personal glory, racking up individual kills. Escort groups would often leave the bombers once they reached the target, roaming free to hunt enemy planes. This left the bombers vulnerable on the dangerous trip home. Davis would have none of it. He issued a strict standing order: stay with the bombers. Protecting the big friends, as the bombers were called, was the only thing that mattered. This flew in the face of everything a fighter pilot was taught to crave. It required immense discipline. Imagine being a young pilot, adrenaline pumping, seeing an enemy fighter peel away, an easy kill for the taking. Davis's men learned to resist that urge. They flew in a tight top-cover formation, weaving above the bombers, a constant, menacing presence to any Luftwaffe pilot looking for a kill. This selfless approach did not go unnoticed. At first, many bomber crews were apprehensive when they saw the Red Tails assigned as their escort, victims of the same prejudices from back home. But they soon learned the truth. Mission after mission, they saw the red-tailed Mustangs clinging to them like guardian angels. White bomber pilots, who had once dreaded the assignment, began to specifically request the Red Tails for the most dangerous missions. They gave them a new nickname, the Red Tail Angels. The stats backed up their reputation. Out of 179 bomber escort missions, the 332nd lost bombers to enemy fighters on only 7. The total number of bombers lost while under their watch was just 27, a staggering achievement compared to the average of 46 lost by other P-51 escort groups in the 15th Air Force. The German pilots, who once laughed, were also learning a hard lesson. The pilots in the red-tailed planes were disciplined, deadly, and they did not break. The laughter had stopped. The legend of the Red Tails was written in the fire of aerial combat, one victory at a time. Across more than 15,000 individual sorties, they carved out a reputation for deadly efficiency. Their final tally was immense: 112 enemy aircraft destroyed in the air, and another 150 on the ground. They wrecked over 950 trucks and rail cars, and even crippled a German destroyer with just their machine guns. But it was in the air where their ultimate story was told. Their skill was undeniable. At least 3 airmen, Clarence Lester, Lee Archer, and Harry Stewart, achieved the remarkable feat of shooting down 3 enemy aircraft in a single day. But no mission better encapsulates their courage than the one they flew on March 24, 1945. The target was a tank factory in Berlin, the heart of the Nazi war machine. It was a 1,600-mile round trip from their base in Italy, the longest bomber escort mission the 15th Air Force had ever flown. Colonel Davis himself led the flight. As they neared Berlin, the sky erupted. The Luftwaffe threw everything it had at the bombers, including a new and terrifying threat, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. The Me-262 was a shark among minnows, over 100 miles per hour faster than the P-51. It should have been untouchable. As the jets streaked through the bomber formation, their cannons tearing into the B-17s, it was up to the red tails to do the impossible. They knew they couldn't catch the jets in a race. Their only hope was to outturn them. As the German jets, confident in their speed, sliced through the formation, the red-tail pilots banked hard, turning inside the jet's wider arcs to get a firing solution. It took incredible nerve and split-second timing. That day, 3 Tuskegee airmen did what many thought couldn't be done. First Lieutenant Roscoe Brown latched onto the tail of an Me-262 and riddled it with 50 caliber rounds. Captain Earl Lane and First Lieutenant Charles Brantley each did the same, executing their attacks with textbook precision. They shot down 3 German jets in a single day, an unheard-of accomplishment. While they fought off the interceptors, the B-17s successfully dropped their payloads, crippling the factory. For their incredible performance, the entire 332nd Fighter Group was awarded the Distinguished Unit Citation, one of 3 they would earn during the war. They had gone to the enemy's capital, faced his most advanced weapon, and had won. The laughter of their enemies was now a distant hollow echo, replaced by the roar of their P-51s over Berlin and the undeniable proof of their valor, counted in the wreckage of 112 enemy planes. The victory over Berlin was more than a successful mission. It symbolized a profound shift. The story of the Red Tails was spreading. The bomber crews, the men who owed their lives to the 332nd, were their most vocal champions. The sight of those red-tailed Mustangs became one of the most welcome sights in the sky. The nickname Red Tail Angels was spoken with genuine reverence. The very men once viewed with suspicion were now among the most requested and respected warriors in the air. Their impact was measured not just in enemy planes destroyed, but in American lives saved. Their record of losing the fewest bombers wasn't just a statistic, it was a testament to a philosophy that put lives over glory. They had faced 2 enemies, the Third Reich and the racism of their own nation, and they had defeated both. When the war ended, the Tuskegee Airmen returned home not to a parade, but to the same segregated society they had left. But something fundamental had changed. The experiment had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. They had proven, in the most demanding environment imaginable, that the racist theories used to justify segregation were a lie. This evidence became a powerful weapon for civil rights activists. The stellar record of the Tuskegee Airmen was a key factor in President Harry S. Truman's monumental decision in 1948 to issue Executive Order 9981. This order mandated the desegregation of the United States Armed Forces, striking a fatal blow to the institutional racism that had defined the military for its entire history. The Red Tails hadn't just helped win the war, they had helped revolutionize the very institution they served, paving the way for the broader civil rights movement to come. For decades, their story was often overlooked. But the airmen themselves kept the legacy alive. Finally, in 2007, their contribution was given its highest due when the surviving Tuskegee Airmen were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the nation's highest civilian honor. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is a powerful saga of triumph over adversity. It began with the derisive laughter of enemy pilots and the poisonous skepticism of their own commanders. It ended with the grudging respect of the Luftwaffe, the heartfelt gratitude of the bomber crews who called them angels, and a legacy that transformed a nation. They were told they were inferior, that they lacked courage, that they couldn't fly. They answered by painting their tails red and flying straight into the fire, proving 112 times that the only thing that matters in the sky is the pilot in the cockpit. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen reminds us that history's greatest battles are often fought not just against foreign enemies, but against injustice at home. Their story is one of thousands from the Second World War that deserves to be remembered. If you found this story compelling, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten heroes and pivotal moments of the war. And let us know in the comments, what other overlooked stories from this era do you think deserve to be told? From the segregated fields of Alabama to the deadly skies over Berlin, the journey of the Tuskegee Airmen is one of the great epics of American history. They were born from a cynical experiment designed to fail, but they refused to be defined by the prejudice of others. They faced down the best pilots the Luftwaffe could muster, flying into legend on wings of skill and tails of red. Their 112 aerial victories, their unmatched record of protecting American bombers, and their role in desegregating the U.S. military is their eternal legacy. They proved that the measure of a person has nothing to do with the color of their skin, but everything to do with the content of their character and the courage in their heart. The laughter has long since faded, but the echo of their engines and the brilliance of their red tails will never be forgotten.